Welcome to Caleb Can't Read. I'm Jordan Rabel.
I'm Caleb Terrence.
I used to do these a lot more shouty, and you told me not to.
Yeah, it's a little startling.
It wakes people up.
No,
now I just feel not energized for it.
That's actually my entire point. Is like if someone happens to fall asleep listening to it, and then it goes to the next episode, and you're like, "Welcome!" Like that's really jarring.
Yeah, good. It wakes them up. There's information that they shouldn't be just leaving behind.
I guess it just wasn't
educational.
Looking at it, that I thought it was mostly like comedy.
It's comedic if I shout it.
Okay.
To
right.
I mean, a smaller demographic like 5-year-olds stuff.
That might scare them.
Good. Scaring children is funnier to our 15-year-old demographic.
Wait, you've been trying to scare children this entire time?
Look at me. Of course.
No. No, but no. Children don't know enough about the world to be scared by you. Parents, though. Definitely a frightening individual.
No. It's okay. It's creeper core. It's creeper core. It's fine.
Sir, can you provide me with some paperwork that proves that you're allowed near this park?
Why would I have... You know what? I'm not going to go down that road. Mm-hmm. Anyway, well, let's get started, shall we? It's not a segue into it, but at least that's enough chatter for it to begin. Wouldn't you say?
I mean, I guess just
I
say
don't
you don't.
have
Just
much.
okay. Just say you don't. Just say that. Just say you don't fucking have one. Don't bullshit me.
I would never.
Do you just space this every time? Like you write out these fucking.
I've been thinking for a good week, 2 weeks about what I would possibly say to.
What you would do to write creatively instead of just like list things that happen and hope that I can riff off of them.
I'm not a creative writer.
What the fuck, man?
I'm a historian, let's say.
Historian?
Of playgrounds.
Okay, tell you what. I will give you the title of historian if you actually contribute to a Wikipedia article instead of just copying off it for once in your life.
No, I don't want to do that at all.
Oh. Okay, all right, so...
Well, let's begin, shall we?
Do you have a little one?
Wait, what are we talking
about?
Like
a little segue.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's little. You should try Portuguese food. It's good.
All right, let's get started.
All right. Jose de Sousa was born November 16th, 1922 in Azinhaga, Portugal. He was born to his mother Maria and his father, also named Jose. Now, not much is known about the de Sousas, partly because little Jose's paternal grandfather was adopted. But it's not like he didn't have other grandparents to ask about the family history. It's just that he only had one likable grandparent. Everyone in the de Sousa family hated each other for one reason or another, but mostly it was just because of small-town European abuse, as I'm sure you can imagine.
I would have...
What?
Never mind, go
on. Now, what's funny is that even though that one grandfather was put up for adoption, stopping little Jose from learning anything past that generation, the grandfather was actually adopted in the same small town that his old family still lived in.
Wait. Okay, adopted his children or like could
He was put up as a baby, I want to say.
Oh, okay. You had me all mixed up in my fucking head. I thought like back in the day you could just like adopt old people for a second.
Fuck, you probably could still.
What?
I mean, you pay the right person, just give away. I don't want to go. Leave, Dad. I don't want you. Come on, it's going to be fun. So this grandfather, he knew his own biological family growing up because he grew up in the same small town as the family that got rid of him. And that family, they had other kids. They just didn't want him. The most likely reason for this is that he probably wasn't a legitimate child. In fact, little Jose would later try to find out what he could on his own, only to find that the most likely candidate for his grandfather's real dad, if that was the case, was this guy who lived just outside of town and was known as a bit of a ladies' man. But Jose didn't bother to look any deeper because this guy was also extremely dangerous. Apparently, there was once a man from town who came to this guy accusing him of fucking his wife. So the grandfather...
You fuck my wife?
Yeah, so the grandfather's probable dad shot this guy in the chest with a fucking shotgun.
Oh.
Supposedly, that house that he lived in still stands, and his murder victim's grave can be seen in the front yard.
Hey, you know what? As fucked up as it is, I bet nobody else accused him of fucking their wife again.
I mean, I'm sure they said it from a distance, but I mean, that's the thing.
From somewhere past about 30 yards.
Well, if that is the truth, then that means that he didn't allow the police or the family of the slain man to take his body, and instead kept it in his front yard as both a warning and a trophy.
Just go to the cops like, are you guys going to do anything? No way. Did you see what happened to that guy? I'm not going in there.
So in 1938, Azinhaga, Portugal, was voted the most Portuguese village. So take that as you will.
What was the runner-up? I need to know, Jordan. Thank you for including that.
So anyway, little Jose tried to find another avenue to find out about his family history and resorted to simply asking his grandfather, the one that was adopted, but he soon learned that even that was taboo. For instance, Jose wasn't allowed to mention the grandfather's sister who stayed with his biological family, someone he knew growing up, because he said mentioning her name was like mentioning rope in the house of a hanged man.
Ooh.
So he had a good little childhood.
Okay.
When Jose was only 2 years old, his parents and 4-year-old brother Francisco moved from Azinhaga to Lisbon for a better life, some 100 kilometers away. He would later put it, quote, as if my having been born in the village were merely the result of some mistake made by chance, some momentary lapse on the part of destiny, a lapse for which destiny still had the power to make amends. Unfortunately, the family only resided in Lisbon for a few months before Jose's brother Francisco died of pneumonia. But the family kept moving forward as best they could. Jose Sr. became a policeman, and wanting to keep with the policeman tradition alive, he started hiding his family. And although the D'Souza...
Not a good one to stutter over. That might have actually landed. How do you feel about that?
Landed like a D'Souza... Never mind. And although the D'Souza family moved from their poor village for a better life in the city, they still remained poor. Jose remembers that whenever winter was over, his mom would sell the blankets, and then in the fall, she'd take out a loan just to buy them back.
Wait, hang on. I feel like we may have gone over this before, so stop me if we have.
Okay.
But have we decided yet whether or not the beating of your spouse is like a thing before or after joining the police force?
You know what? It was inconclusive.
Okay.
Inconclusive. But you know, if this guy started, look, he's a good variable here. This guy was not hitting his family until he became a cop.
All right. Okay, so in this instance,
it's a point towards after your career choice.
And that's a pretty loose standard because, people used to beat the shit out of their kids back in the day. So,
of course,
he's at least beating the shit out of his kids. So if the bar's that fucking low and then it gets amped up,
it is a hard game of limbo with that. Yeah.
That's...
Well, one of the many apartments they lived in...
Whoa, closed or open hand? Closed. Holy shit, dude. Too far.
Well, one of the many apartments they lived in didn't even have a bathroom. It was essentially just a room that had a stove and a sink, and you had a hole in the corner that you would sweep all your dust and food shavings into.
Did you poop in it?
As well as your piss and shit.
Yeah, I saw that coming.
And something I found ingenious that they did, to forego a higher water bill, his family would pierce a hole in the water pipe that ran up the apartment wall, tie a rag around the hole, and have a loose end of the rag run into a pot. So they were siphoning off water before it could hit the meter and charge them for it.
It's kind of brilliant.
Yeah. And to seal the hole, they just press a knife over the hole and heat it up with like a flame and just weld it shut again.
Huh.
I wish I knew that when I was poor. Well, the family was too poor to even rent a van when it came to moving. About 10 different residences in 10 years. So the family had to move entire boxes of their shit, sometimes for miles, to the next place. That I would not be okay with. That I cannot do.
Like hundreds of miles?
Not hundreds, but I mean, let me give you a little bit of a breakdown of what Lisbon looks like. It's a hill on top of a hill on top of a hill on top of a hill. It looks like a fucking landscape that Dr. Seuss made.
Jesus.
Just tons of hills. I saw nobody as big as me. Everyone was walking around and had terrific thighs.
Yeah, no shit, you would be okay with that. Remember when you tried to move a couch with me once?
No.
I do, it was great.
I'm glad I blocked it out. It'd probably get me real sweaty.
Holy shit, dude.
Well, during the summer, young Jose would go back up to his birthplace of Azinhaga to visit his grandparents. But his time there was spent almost like a vagrant. Basically, from the time he was a very young kid, I'm talking 4 or 5, he would just wake up at his grandparents' place, pack a bindle, and leave for like a day or two. just sleeping in random barns or derelict shacks. He just spent his time hiking the entire time. Said his grandma never even told him to be careful. Just, be back in a few days, Grandma. Okay, see ya. You know, like, that was it. Just letting this toddler run loose.
That's what the toddler sounded like?
I mean, for someone that tough, yeah. That's
wow.
how it was in my head. I don't know if you remember.
From someone from the most Portuguese town, yes.
I don't know if you remember Edward Abbey's dad, Paul Revere Abbey. The guy who's like, Paul, we're out of coal. I'm going out to the abandoned mines and getting some, and I'll be back in a few days. Like, I feel like maybe that's how he grew up in this situation.
Yeah.
Now, Jose de Sousa had a love of horses, stemming from an uncle who took care of them for rich elites near Azinhaga. And as much as he wanted to ride the horses, Jose had to just watch as his little cousin was favored instead. When he got much older, Jose rented a horse hoping to redeem his confidence. But the horse, quote, took me wherever it fancied, stopped whenever it cared to, and didn't even turn its head to say goodbye when I slid down from the saddle. Apparently in his later life, Jose would have tons of pictures of horses in his home, and guests would always ask if he was a good rider. But he says, the truth is that I'm still suffering from the effects of a fall from a horse I never rode. There are no outward signs, but my soul has been limping for the last 70 years. There's nothing about this story that you have to remember, by the way. I just found it really sad.
Jesus. Just pick another fucking hobby. Like, fuck, man.
Oh, man, horseback riding is neat, you know?
Not like model trains. I don't know. Like, how about that?
Anyway.
You tried whittling?
It seems like something a kid from Azinhaga would do.
Yeah.
What are you going to do besides hiking? You going to stop and rest? Yeah, I'll whittle some,
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, when little Jose de Sousa was finally enrolled in primary school at the age of 7, his parents had to show his birth certificate to the school for the registry, where they learned that their son was not in fact named Jose de Sousa Jr., but was instead named Jose de Sousa Saramago. Saramago, in Portuguese, means wild radish. So his mom, Maria, was of course a little confused. She was like, what the fuck? But she looks to her husband, Jose Sr., who's just shaking with anger. He remembers getting into some sort of argument with the drunken desk clerk that was working at the hospital that day. And I guess Saramago is like a schoolyard insult, and this guy was just being a dick and decided to legally change the kid's last name to something else.
That's amazing.
That's so dicky.
That's fantastic.
But as it turns out, it isn't totally out of the ordinary to have a last name.
Fuck you and your kid.
Yeah, exactly. It isn't totally out of the ordinary to have a last name that's synonymous with food in Portugal, though, I guess. I don't know if that's still the case today, but apparently it was back then. Kind of like how American and English last names are commonly based on occupations. Smith, cook, dildo maker, miller, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Jose once even denied a girl's advances because her last name was Bacalhau. He didn't want to marry a woman just to have her known in English as salt-cod radish. Well, believe it or not, the insult made on Jose Jr.'s birth certificate was taken in stride, and instead of legally omitting the name Saramago from his son's record, Jose Sr. changed his last name to Saramago instead, even though he apparently fucking hated it. Regardless, the world would forever know Jose de Sousa Jr. as Jose Saramago.
Jose Radish guy?
Yep.
Okay.
Jose the Radish. By the way, just as an aside, the birth date on Saramago's birth certificate is actually wrong too, but that part was on purpose. If you didn't register your child's birth within 30 days of them being born, you'd get a fine. And I guess Jose...
Like with dogs?
Yes. And I guess his dad was away working on a farm for like another few days, so when he registered his son's birth, he lied.
Look, we're just trying to control the kid mills, all right? Like...
Well, he just lied and said it was November 18th instead of the 16th, so he wouldn't get fined. Anyway, although Saramago was very young when it happened, he says that some of his first memories are when Portugal underwent a change of power to a dictatorship in 1928. Specifically, he remembers the sound of artillery fire sailing over his house to bomb protesters in the park at the end of the street. It's a hell of a cool memory.
I'm glad my house is here.
Yeah. He also remembers his brother Francisco's aforementioned death, and terrifyingly, he remembers when he was only about 2 or 3 years old, and 3 slightly older boys held him down and forced a wire into his urethra at a construction site.
That took a turn.
Yeah. They didn't get scared from his screams. They got scared when they saw blood, so they just ran away and left this toddler wandering around with a fucking wire sticking out of his prick. No lasting damage besides the psychological trauma, by the way. But
yeah.
Anyway, thought that was a neat tidbit. Want to let you know about that.
Imagine if the first time you saw blood, it was coming out of your dick.
Oh, fuck, dude. Oh, it's terrifying.
Like,
that doesn't belong out there.
I already know about blood. I'd still be really concerned if it came out of my penis.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man, for any of our listeners out there who have had blood come out of their penis. Look,
Probably quite a few, actually.
Look, for our demographic, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it happens.
No, I do. Like, that's actually how a lot of my friends have figured out that they had to clap, so. And I don't mean, like, a little bit of red blood. I mean, like, they are fucking...
I am glad to know it somewhere in the back of my mind. I'm not going to run into that issue, but I'm glad to know it.
Like, that shit is glip-glopping all over the fucking...
Flippity-flopping all over the toilet seat.
Nasty as fuck, dude.
Well, now, Jose Saramago's
like a
family...
gutter that needs to be cleaned.
Stop it.
Right out of their fucking penis,
Shut the fuck
dude.
up. God damn it.
What?
Now, Jose Saramago's family didn't know...
There's an explicit warning on it. It's fine. Let me talk about dick blood from the clap.
His family didn't know how to read. Or rather, his dad did when it was required of him since he was a cop. But also, he was a cop, so he didn't really need to. But Jose Saramago...
Imagine they'd fudge that a little bit, too, if they really needed cops,
Yeah. I mean, we're not talking about, like... And we know how bad the cops were in big towns in America back in the day. I mean, even today. Way worse back then still. But we're talking fucking, like...
I don't think there's a good time period for cops.
Maybe when the idea first came out, then there was like, hey, is that Johnny? Yeah, he's a cop now. Oh, that's cool. He's just kind of turning a blind eye to some of the people he doesn't like. Yeah,
hey guys,
that's weird.
Guys, okay, so this may sound weird. Did anyone else beat their wife last night?
Johnny, what the fuck? I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. I just wore this badge and like the fucking Necronomicon, dude. It was just talking to me. I don't know what happened. So
I beat my wife, kids. I kicked my fucking dog.
I didn't know what to do. I ran over to my neighbor's, knocked on his door, punched him in the face when he answered. I don't know what to do. So Jose
I planted cocaine on him. I don't even know what the fuck that is.
Hasn't been invented yet. I don't know what I'm doing.
It's not even illegal.
So nobody in his family knew how to read. But Jose Saramago learned, seemingly out of boredom, by looking at the newspaper each morning until he figured out what it said. Like just following from pictures to sidelines and everything. And his father was so impressed with him that he got him a Portuguese to French conversation book. Like he just got him a random ass book and he was like, reading, huh? There's a book.
Look, I know you're having trouble with just this language. Now, how about another one at the same time?
Yeah. No. But here's the thing. Like, so he just got him a book thinking like, like a grandparent getting you like a fucking NES game because you're like, oh, I heard he's a gamer, and nobody has that, like, here, I got it for you. But like, it's not, so it wasn't a story or anything. It's just, literally a book for translating Portuguese to French. But yeah. What?
In his defense, if you can't fucking read, what does it matter what's in the book?
That's fair. Yeah, no. It's that's what I'm kind of equating it to. Is like I don't think he was trying to get his son to be smart. He just he was just like, here you go.
Here, pretend to read this, jackass.
But surprisingly, because of this, Saramago started learning French almost as soon as he started learning Portuguese.
Oh.
It fucking worked.
All right.
And Saramago was an excellent student. He was even in a special class led by the principal of his school with only 3 other kids. And eventually, he was elected student treasurer. Thing is, what student treasurers usually do when they're this young is they're given a budget that they're like supposed to try and not go over when they plan for like a graduation party for the end of the year and shit. Like it just kind of gets them into, politics, I guess, or something. But like this 12-year-old was giving fucking budget sheets and tax forms and was actually working as an accountant for the school. He was like that guy from the Shawshank Redemption. Unfortunately for Saramago, his family would have to take him out of school the same year that he was made school treasurer due to their poor income, transferring their son to a trade school where he could learn a career and get a job to help support the family.
They could make him fucking treasurer. They couldn't fucking afford a scholarship.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, they're just like...
Well, I guess if they need fucking, like, child labor to do their taxes, then no, they can't afford that.
I don't think it's exactly like Shawshank Redemption where it's like, no, you can't let him leave. We'll pay for his tuition. Like, I don't think it was that. I think they're like, man, this kid might suck at this, but, like, at least we're not doing it. We'll just get another kid to do it. Another 12-year-old. But, yeah, so they sent him to trade school.
How hard would taxes be back then, really?
I don't know. Especially, you're asking me about Portuguese taxes. Shit, man, they could be on a fucking lined paper. I don't know.
Can't be that fucking different. Math is math, man.
This sucks in every language. Well, so they tried to get him a job to support the family, which he did. Jose Saramago graduated from technical school in his late teens and worked as a mechanic for a couple years afterwards. Around this time, Saramago's grandfather suffered a stroke, and his grandparents were forced to move to Lisbon as well, closer to the family and with better medicine. He said about the grandfather, quote, "He went into the yard of his house, where there were a few trees, fig trees, olive trees, and he went one by one, embracing the trees and crying, saying goodbye to them because he knew he would not return. To see this, to live this, if that doesn't mark you for the rest of your life, you have no feeling." Something that comes about a lot in Saramago's books are olive trees, which the village of Azinhaga was known for. So I can see how this memory really fucking affected him. Now, while Saramago was working as a mechanic, World War II was kicking off. And if you didn't know, as much as the Portuguese like to pretend otherwise, they were at the height of capitalism in World War II. Like, they did help the Allies, but they were also selling munitions to the Axis powers and the fascist government in Spain because Portugal itself was under a dictatorship, so they, like, had their obligations. But, like, I remember seeing this big Jesus statue, like the one that they have in Brazil, and it's up on this big hill on the other side of the Tagus River in Lisbon, so you can see it from fucking everywhere. And I remember the little automated tour guide thing on the bus said that it was built to commemorate how the ill effects of the war didn't really touch Portugal. And we're not talking about, like, Swiss type of neutrality where they didn't help either side. We're talking about Portugal making money through both sides so they wouldn't get hurt. And I was like, I don't think that statue of Jesus ought to be there. So anyway, yeah, that's more of a stain on your history, isn't it? So as World War II...
That might make God mad.
Remember that one story of Jesus overturning all the fucking tables of the sellers outside a church? And, that's weird. That chapter is gone from this Portuguese Bible. That's weird. So as World War II was ramping up, there was like a line
We're about to be canceled in Portugal. I hope you're happy. You better be fucking right about this. Like an ass.
So as World War II was ramping up, there was like a line of people leading up to the enlistment offices where you could like sign up to be a brown shirt. Like, hey, come join the dictatorship. We'll see who we help in the end, you know. And according to Saramago, it kind of sounds like he tried to join them, but the line was too long, and this guy came up and was like, sorry, we ran out of uniforms. Try again tomorrow, and he just never did. So he did try to become a fascist at one point. He just didn't try very hard.
Huh. Okay.
Well, either way, Jose Saramago kept away from the war and spent his time in the Lisbon library reading the classics of the country. Around this time, he met and married a woman named Ilda Reis when he was around 22 and she was 21 in 1944. Together, they had a daughter named Violante in 1947. The same year as the birth of his daughter, Jose Saramago gave his hand at not just being a book nerd, but becoming a real-life author with the publication of his first novel, Land of Sin, which I haven't read because it's not in English. I was actually very excited to go to the Jose Saramago Museum when I was in Lisbon because I was already in love with what I'd read so far, and I knew I wanted to do an episode on him, but there were things I just couldn't find online or at Powell's, and I knew I had to read his first book, so I showed up with, like, a list of things I was looking for, and I asked the guy who was helping me, like, hey, where's Land of Sin? And he was like, what, his first book? That's not in English. In fact, it just got translated to traditional Spanish last year because it's a bad book. And I was like, did you read it? He was like, I only got, like, halfway through, so I'll take his word for it. Not a good book. It's about a widowed woman named Maria who starts an affair with her brother-in-law. That's about it. And apparently the public thought the same as the guy I was talking to because it didn't get Jose Saramago a whole lot of money. And by the way, if you happen to look for the book now, I guess if you can read either Portuguese or Spanish, they just started printing the book under the title that Jose Saramago wanted to call it, which was The Widow. But I guess the publishers back then thought Land of Sin sounded better, so they just changed it. Anyway, while the book's sales were meager, Saramago already wasn't making a whole lot as a mechanic. So when he got his paycheck for Land of Sin, it allowed him to quit his job and jump between different careers. And although the book allowed him this opportunity, first becoming a social worker and then becoming a translator for a publishing company.
That's quick.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you want to do, I guess.
Bet the social worker one was pretty fast, though.
Yeah.
Quick little jump and then jump out.
Yeah.
The translator thing I get with the skills, but not the social work one.
Yeah, well, he would, I mean, this translating thing, he would work for this publishing company, Estudios Core, for the next 20 years. Like, so I guess that was his thing. I don't know why he jumped out of being a social worker so fucking fast. Honestly, probably because of the paperwork. He just didn't want to deal with it.
Always sucked and continues to suck?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Well, regardless of all that time, he never recognizes Land of Sin as like a good thing. In fact, he fully disowned the book, seeing it as a complete failure. But he didn't give up on writing. He decided instead to give it at least one more try. Now, for the next few short years, he worked as for the few short years that he worked as a social worker, Jose Saramago was working on a novel he called Skylight, about the lives of tenants that all live within their little apartment building, possibly inspired by the people he actually met in his line of work. He worked on this book for 6 years, really trying his level best to see himself as an author. In 1953, he finally finished. He sent the manuscript to a different publisher than the last one, maybe blaming the changes to Land of Sin as the reason for its downfall. So Jose Saramago waited, and waited, and waited, and finally he heard nothing. Not a rejection letter, not a you suck, try again, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He took this as the ultimate answer toward his skills as a writer. He had none. He was a hack. And because of this, Jose Saramago wouldn't write another novel for 19 years. Even when he later became an established writer, Jose Saramago saw the silence he received for Skylight as proof that the novel was bad, and he never once mentioned the book's existence again.
You think he overthought it and maybe it just got mixed up in the mail?
You're jumping ahead to like the second episode, but that is exactly what happened. Yep, that is 100% what happened.
Okay.
But I mean, hey, he's every author is their own worst critic, unless they're an asshole, in which case they're like the best critic, and they're like, I'm fucking amazing. But no, he was pretty harsh on himself. No, in between his second and eventual third novel, Saramago would try other things. He fancied himself a poet for a time, releasing a collection called Possible Poems in 1966, and then a sequel of sorts called Probable Joy in 1970, but again, very meager success. I don't think those books have even been translated to any other language. In 1968, the 46-year-old Saramago met the 43-year-old Maria Isabel Guerra Bastos Gonçalves, though she would be professionally known simply as Isabel de Nobrega. Isabel was already a well-known author and playwright at this point, though she also worked on translating several works to Portuguese as well, same as him. Except while Saramago was mostly translating things like textbooks at this point, she was translating the works of Graham Greene and Leo Tolstoy. Now, she had already been married once at this point to a doctor, and they were long separated, but she was currently in a relationship with another author, though that relationship was quickly turning sour. This guy would apparently go on to write a book based on her, on Isabel, in 1975, after they broke up, called The Hands and the Gloves, where he compares his character, that is her, to Madame Bovary, a famous 19th century literary character about a stupid countrywoman who lives far beyond her means. So that relationship ending didn't bother him at all.
Jesus, bud.
I know. So Isabel and Jose Saramago would find a long-standing love for one another, ending in Saramago's obvious divorce in 1970 to his current wife, Hilda Reis, after 26 years. That's pretty fucking good, honestly, though. I mean, I'm not saying he's a good guy, but I'm just saying...
That's a good run.
That is 26 years. Jesus Christ, man. I remember everyone talking about Heidi Klum and Seal being together forever, and it's like, when you look it up, they were together for, like 10 years? I don't know. That's as good as it gets in Hollywood. But anyway, Saramago, he would actually pull this same shit on Isabel much later on, but we'll get there. Anyway, Isabel became Saramago's mentor for what he really wanted to do, which was write novels. She was way ahead of him in terms of a career, even having won some national awards and recognition. Shit, the years they met, Isabel was even starting her own national newspaper called A Capital that would run until 2005, so she knew what she was talking about. Also during this time, in 1969, Jose Saramago joined the Portuguese Communist Party, which he would continue to be a member of for the next 40 years of his life. And I will say, I'm happy that he never used his work as a platform to spread his politics like so many authors do. He said being an author was just a job, and when he's on the clock, he does his job. But when he clocks out, he's a communist. So, I mean, good for him.
Okay.
I'm just saying. Now, in 1974, Portugal underwent what was called the Carnation Revolution, which amazingly was a peaceful, nonviolent uprising that actually worked. It was called the Carnation Revolution because the carnation flower ended up being a symbol for the movement. The people actually managed to overthrow their government. And yeah, sure, the military were the ones who wanted to make it a communist nation anyway, and they had all the tanks and the guns, so it was less of a revolution and more of an overthrow.
A suggested coup.
But still, you know,
if you will.
And also, yes, the military leader that started it would later be branded a terrorist, as he did worse things in later decades.
I didn't say we were going to do a coup. I just said, we agreed with these people. That's all we're saying right now.
Look, I'm just agreeing with the guys with the tanks and the guns. That's all. Well, the point is, the Portuguese dictatorship now became a pro-communist government, and Jose Saramago was very pro-communist. With the revolution came the restructuring of several government-led businesses, such as the Diario de Noticias, the newspaper from which Saramago learned to read as a kid. With Saramago's enthusiasm towards the Carnation Revolution, he was made assistant director of the newspaper. Now, yes, a little undeserving, I'll admit, but when the lineup of new editors was announced, obviously chosen for their allegiance to the cause rather than their skill, a panel of 30 journalists, half the staff of the newspaper, put out a memo to the higher-ups calling for a restructure. And since Saramago was one of those higher-ups, he fired 24 of the 30 journalists that signed their names, accusing them of being right-wingers. So he's not the best guy, you know?
Oh.
I mean, I'm just saying, you know?
Okay. All right.
I can't give him all of his good deeds and not mention the shitty parts.
Well, yeah.
However, Portugal would undergo a new uprising just a little after a year from the Carnation Revolution. Almost. Apparently, some felt that the Carnation Revolution wasn't communist enough, so a splinter of the military tried to overthrow the government again. They rained down paratroopers onto military bases with the idea to take them over. You know, the military bases with the big-ass surface-to-air guns. So that didn't work. And as it turned out, Saramago was actually a big supporter of this failed revolution. So when the pro-government newspaper found out, he ended up sacked himself.
Mm-hmm.
As stupid as this was, it was what finally got Jose Saramago to give writing another try. While Saramago worked on his first novel in 19 years, he released a series of articles he'd written for the newspaper in several different collections. Seems to me he didn't want his work to go to waste, and I guess he was proud of his writing, so he wanted to siphon what money he could out of them. He released essay collections in 1971, 73, and 74 before finally completing his novel in 1977 called Manual of Painting and Calligraphy. The story is about a man simply by the name of H. He is a painter, though regrettably a commercial one. People commission him for portraits, and his job is to merely to make them look good. He does not have the opportunity to paint the truth. As he puts it, I can guarantee durability. I do not guarantee art. Now, what H really wants to do is write, but he's never studied the craft. So while a businessman named S commissions a portrait for him, he instead makes two.
What I really want to do is write. Have you ever tried writing anything? No, just been drawing.
Yeah.
But I want to write. Just fucking write, man. Like,
no, as you'll get from this, H is a pretentious douche. And it's that whole thing of like, have you ever tried? Yeah, exactly that. Like maybe just dipping your toes in the
I
water.
feel
there?
like you're just
No.
saying this to sound cool.
Yeah.
H.
So when this businessman S commissions a portrait from him, he instead makes two. One he'll give to the client and knows that he's going to love it, but the other one he makes for himself, something that he considers the true image of this man.
Is the true image all abstract and bullshitty?
I mean, it probably would be, yeah.
Ugh.
H paints this portrait in a way that he describes is as close to writing the truth that anyone could manage. So S comes by several times to sit for H as he first sketches and then begins painting the portrait. And as he engages in small talk to get to know S better for his second portrait, he also gets to know the businessman's secretary, Olga. And you'll notice that some characters are named letters, whereas others have full names. And that's because H says that he will not call anyone by their full name unless he has them completely figured out. He believes that by meeting someone 1 or 2 times, he can fully know what they're about. And eventually, you start to notice that not once does he call a woman by the letter of her first name like he does the guys.
Gross.
Because all women are the same, and once you've met one, you've met them all.
Oh, what's this one called?
He is extremely misogynistic.
Oh.
So for instance, he likes driving around at night and slowing down next to women walking home just to scare them. The good old pastime, Oh, she's probably a bitch slut anyway.
No, I'm mostly just afraid of that coincidence happening. I'm just like, no, I'm not. I need to slow down. Oh, shit. Like,
dude, oh my God. I had that happen the other day. No, it was worse. I was out of my car. I had to walk, okay, so basically I was bringing trash cans back up to the side of my house, and I had to walk across my driveway and my front yard in order to get to the sidewalk, in which the mailbox was down towards the end of the street. But as I'm I'm walking out, and I see this woman walking down the sidewalk, and I'm like, all she's gonna see is a dude walking out of the dark and not going down a driveway.
Do I say hi?
Yeah, and not walking down the sidewalk. Instead, I'm cutting through grass to intercept her. And no. I'm just so I did something that I felt was a little bit worse. I let her pass by, but what that meant was that I'm slowed down to a stop in front of my yard, just standing there, just blocked out by a tree. Just
God damn it, dude.
I tried my best. Look, I just want to see if I got my bills in or not,
I'm sorry.
I don't mean to.
Maybe if I hide here, she won't see me and I can avoid this whole awkward situation.
I mean, does it make it better or worse if I hi? And then it's oh fuck, this creepy guy is going to try to talk to me. I
don't know. I've heard mixed things.
It would have been better for her if she just walked to the other side of the street. Honestly, it would have been better for both of us.
It's a roll of the dice.
So anyway, as H secretly learns more about the businessman S, he finds him more complicated of a person than just a simple businessman. Turns out S wants the portrait for the boardroom of his company to watch over the rest of the directors, something that H expected, but he also plans on making a copy to give to his mother. As H learns more about him, thinking he was just your run-of-the-mill capitalist, he slowly realizes that S is actually a sweet guy. But since this fucks up everything that H was trying to depict in his second portrait, it destroys him. He blacks out the second portrait, realizing that he can never know the true self that he wishes to paint. And after his commission is done, H decides to give up on painting altogether to become a writer. In fact, he starts traveling Europe for inspiration to his memoirs, more specifically to make his memoirs more interesting. And as he lives the life that he feels authors should, he gets so far up his own ass that he alienates everyone else. He alienates his friends, the secretary Olga that he secretly started banging, even alienates his own wife and child, which takes 183 pages for him to mention for the first time, and are only mentioned in passing, with the quote, "Art school did not make me a painter, nor did marriage and fatherhood, something I omitted to mention, make me any different." And then he never mentions them again.
Is his kid just a letter?
No, he's got him figured out. That's Jimmy.
Okay.
But, I mean, yeah, so he just never mentions them
Kid
again.
is
It's
just
literally
K.
in passing. If you were spacing out in that single sentence, it's gone. You never know that this guy is actually a father to some kid and a husband, and he just doesn't see them. Now, I will say, while I don't think that H is supposed to be a stand-in for Saramago himself, he did pull this same shit, abandoning his wife and child for someone else in real life. Now, H has a friend named Carmo. Again, if they have a name instead of a letter, then he feels he knows them more than they know themselves. And Carmo is a publisher. He says during a dinner party that he'd be willing to publish H's memoirs regardless of how they turn out.
That's surprising because, like, if anyone ever told me that they would only call me by my full name if they felt like they knew me more than I knew myself, I would never hang out with them again.
Right? But look at who
or
he
do
hangs
them
out
any
with.
favors.
Publishers and other pretentious douches.
All right,
oh,
man.
that's just Herman. Oh, you mean H? Yeah, H. No, he's a douche.
No, that makes sense. I could only put up with that from people that I'm paid to be around.
Well, and that's the whole thing is he calls himself by the letter because he doesn't know his true self. He doesn't have himself figured out, you see. You know, fucking
Christ.
douchebag.
Yeah. Look like he got. Oh my god.
So his friend Carmo says that he's going to publish the memoirs regardless of how they turn out. But according to what H writes, he knows that Carmo is only saying this to impress a girl named Sandra that's there too. And he's right. As the months go by, H believes that maybe his work really will get published, but his dream dies when Carmo comes to him saying that there's no more reason for him to print the book since Sandra won't fuck him. Apparently the issue was that Carmo is like 50, but Sandra was young enough to know better, basically. According to H...
Young enough to know better.
You know, not that young, just young enough to know better.
Maybe just not into 50-year-old dudes?
Mm-hmm. Well, according to H, and this pretty much sums it up, quote, I reckoned Sandra must have worn him out. Sandra sunning herself on the beach, Sandra in the nightclub, Sandra in bed, and an exhausted Carmo pleading mercy for his weak heart and tired penis.
Soft pee-pee hours.
Hey, man, that's let's not delve into that too much.
Just stop looking at her sunbathe, you fucking weirdo. Jesus Christ.
Now, what H learns from his months of studying is that for all the things he thought could only pertain to writing, such as motifs and dialogue, could actually be represented in painting as well. Although we see calligraphy and painting as two separate art forms, they're really just two ways to form the same picture. H finds that people are too complex to ever fully understand, and that you don't need to know everything in order to make good art. As he concludes, it is a mistake to confuse art with life. So Nicole actually did the research for this book. She was my research assistant for this episode.
Jesus Christ, you can't even do the research.
Look, okay, I'm trying to get this episode out by November 16th, and I ran out of time to read a whole other novel.
Why?
Because it's his 100th birthday.
Okay.
So anyway, I didn't have time to read before that date.
Yeah, man, no, it's a good thing you got it out by his birthday. Otherwise, our sponsors would have been pissed, Jordan. We got a lot fucking riding on this.
So she read this book, and she gave me detailed summaries of it. And my God, I should have had her read something else. She will not stop making any sexy situation unsexy by quoting the sex scenes from this book.
What, do you have a tired penis?
No, it's worse. As as she has told me on more than one occasion, inside her, I am forever spilling millions of spermatozoa already condemned to death, trapped in a viscous fluid which pours from me as I lie there panting.
I wanted to leave because I was bored. Now I wanted to leave because you're gross.
I can't fucking do it anymore, man. The sound of water spilled over moss.
The smell of freshly mowed grass.
No, this book, surprisingly to you and me, it was actually well received. That much I know. The book did have poor sales, though, and the reason was the title. If you've made a name for yourself over the years as a journalist, but not as an author, who's going to know to pick up a book called Manual of Painting and Calligraphy and know that it is a novel?
It's actually about tired middle-aged penis.
Yeah. In fact, unless you were even specifically looking for a book that tells you how to paint and do calligraphy, why the fuck would you even bother to pick it up?
And if you were, then you'd be pissed.
Yeah. So practically no one did. Actually, when we first got the book at the Jose Saramago thing, I was like, oh shit, he actually made a little manual of painting and calligraphy. I bet that's really beautifully written in his way. And then I was like, oh fuck, it's a novel. Nicole, read this. But the poor sales didn't deter Saramago because the reviews were actually really, really good. So just a year later, in 1978, Jose Saramago released a collection of short stories he'd been working on since he was fired at the newspaper 4 years earlier. The collection is called The Lives of Things. Now I'm going to give you a little context for our first story, simply titled Chair. He's not good at making titles. Antonio de Oliveira Salazar was the dictator who ruled over Portugal from 1932 to 1968. It was his poor health which put Marcelo Caetano into the seat of power, which was then overthrown during the Carnation Revolution in 1974. Now, what put Salazar, this dictator, in poor health was him tipping back in his chair and the legs fucking broke, causing him to hit his head. At first, it was nothing more than a bump, but after 2 weeks, Salazar then began to feel ill, and then slowly he slipped into a coma. After a month, Salazar slowly gained lucidity, but he'd never truly recover. On July 27th, 1970, he was dead at 81, all from tipping back in his chair. It took 2 years to kill him, but that is what did it. However, in 2009, it was revealed by someone who was actually there when Salazar fell. He didn't tip back in his chair. He slipped getting out of the fucking bathtub, which is way more embarrassing.
It would hurt a lot more, though.
Yeah, it definitely explains the fucking porcelain gash in his head. So they just told everyone it was from a chair breaking instead, so it wouldn't be as, you
just slipped in the
fucking
bathtub,
goofy.
man. That shit is terrifying.
I mean, I know, but dude, like, here's a man who's like tortured and killed tons of people, and then they're just like, how did he die?
It's real slippery.
Chair broke. Oh, he was naked and his dick flopped down. Fucking. Yeah, no, I see why it's goofy.
Dick went down and yelled for his wife.
So anyway, the story of Chair is nothing more than a slow description of everything that happens to a seat breaking under the weight of an unnamed dictator. From the type of wood the chair is made out of, to the rot growing inside it, to the posture of the nameless dictator, which is described as saying that he moves his arms and legs like an upturned turtle when his belly is in the air, before looking more like a seminarian in boots masturbating at home during the holidays while his parents are out harvesting. Dude's got a thing for stroking it. Now, the story itself perhaps sounds a little boring, which granted, but the most rewarding part of any Jose Saramago story truly is in the writing. The story is the introduction to Jose Saramago's signature writing style, where he speaks to the reader as if you're just two people who happen to meet in a bar. And that's why I love this guy. His stories can be thought-provoking, moving, and beautiful, but then he'll just break into a random tirade that has nothing to do with the story, like he's just remembered something.
Who the fuck have you been talking to in bars? Jesus.
Oh, you're not the only person I go with in bars.
We haven't been to a bar together in a very long time.
Oh, well. Hey.
When I go to bars, it's because I just want to be alone also.
Well,
people don't ever fucking talk to me in bars.
I actually enjoyed meeting people in bars before the pandemic.
Huh.
I was kind of hoping to get back to that the other night. Didn't really happen. I talked to anime with this one guy for a little bit because he had a Naruto headband.
Wow, you chose to talk to that person.
Yeah.
That would have been a big red flag for me, but I would not have done that.
Yeah, he was also big and intimidating, and I knew he could beat me up, so I'm like, yeah, I'll reciprocate these feelings. I'll go ahead and talk to him. What?
You were threatened by a weeb?
You did not see this weeb. Look, weebs don't hang out with women. They go home and work out while they watch their anime. They can have that power now.
Yeah, if they're on the no fap side of things. If they're not.
So anyways, here's an example of his writing, and this is how the story of Chair begins. The chair started to fall, to come crashing down, to topple, but not, strictly speaking, to come to bits. Strictly speaking, to come to bits means bits fall off. Now, no one speaks of the chair having bits, and if it had bits, such as arms on each side, then you would refer to the arms of the chair falling off rather than coming to bits. But now that I remember, it has to be said that heavy rain comes down in buckets. So why should chairs not be able to come down in bits? At least for the sake of poetic license. At least for the sake of being able to use an expression referred to as style. Therefore, accept that chairs come to bits, although preferably they should simply fall, topple, or come crashing down.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
And he's like this in every fucking book. And I think there's proof to Jose Saramago just speaking to the reader in each one, because there aren't any quotation marks in his books, which, sure, Cormac McCarthy and James Joyce do the exact same thing, but they at least put paragraph breaks where one character stops talking and the next one begins to show dialogue. Saramago won't even have a period at the end of his sentences. Instead, he has long run-on sentences where one character stops speaking, there's a comma, then when the next person speaks, the only indication to show who speaks next is a capital letter.
So that's fine.
Yeah. So, for instance, here's an excerpt from a later book of his, and this is all one sentence long, only broken up with commas. The treasurer strokes his chin with one hand, absorbed in some profound meditation. He opens one of the ledgers as if about to make a definitive statement, but amends the gesture and simply says, "Your Majesty should know that as our funds dwindle, our debts increase. Last month, you gave me much the same report, and in the month before that, and in the year before that, and at this rate, Your Majesty, we shall soon empty our coffers. We have a long way to go before we empty our coffers, with one in Brazil and one in India, and when they are exhausted, the news will take so long to reach us that we shall find ourselves saying, 'So we were poor after all,' without even having realized it." All one sentence.
That's fun.
Yeah. And because dialogue is always just one sentence long, it means that these sentences can go on for several pages at a time.
It's kind of like more how people talk, though.
Exactly, especially if he's in a bar telling you something, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, most of Saramago's work is composed of very few paragraphs. In your typical book, there's like 10 paragraphs per page in a 12-page chapter, let's say. And when I counted a random chapter from one of his books, I counted 12 pages and only 6 paragraphs in the entire thing. And just a couple more points on his writing style, and then I'll shut up about it because I love him. But he'll have stories that take place in like the medieval times or the Renaissance days or what have you. And sometimes he'll tell it as if he's from that same time period. And then he'll say something that references shit that no one from that time period could possibly know because it doesn't happen for like another 1,000 years. Like, there's a later book that we'll talk about that takes place around the year 0, but he says, "Any ironic or irreverent discipline of Voltaire will find," and Voltaire wasn't born for like another 700 years. He also has this sort of omnipotent, godlike presence in all his stories where he acts like he was there and has witnessed the things he writes about and can tell you exactly what was said, but he still rambles like he's been drinking. For instance, this is from a part where a king and a treasurer are talking to each other. "Are you trying to tell me that shit is money?" "No, Your Majesty, that money is shit, and I'm in a position to know squatting down here like everyone else who finds himself looking after someone else's money." This dialogue is fictitious, apocryphal, and libellous, and also deeply immoral. It respects neither throne nor altar. It makes a king and his treasurer speak as if they were drovers conversing in a tavern, and all we need are a few comely wenches to provoke the most awful outbursts of foul language. What you have just read, however, is simply an updated rendering of colloquial Portuguese, since what the king really said was, "As from today, your stipend is doubled, so that you will be under less pressure," whereupon the treasurer replied, "I kiss Your Majesty's hand in gratitude."
They sound like South Park Canadians.
Is that my voice or the writing?
No, not the voice. Maybe if we sped it up.
It is incredibly just off the cuff. Like, I would like to know how many drafts he actually went through instead of just being like, "Oh yeah, and another thing I forgot," you know. Anyway, I fucking love Jose Saramago as a writer, so I had to go off about that.
Do you love him?
I love him.
Do you love him? Do you love the writing style?
I love him.
Oh wow, that's fucking great. How many more pages do you have explaining why?
That was it, actually.
Oh, fuck.
Anyway, there's one other story from his 1978 short story collection, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
This one is called Things. This story is
Wait,
from...
I thought the last thing was Things.
No, last one was Chair. From
No.
The collection is called The Lives of Things.
The Lives of Things. This
Yeah.
one is just Things?
Things.
Okay. This
Yeah.
is the Things from
This
Lives
is,
of Things?
This is Things.
So
This
Chair...
is
okay.
the song Bad Company from the band Bad Company off the first album Bad Company.
I see.
You see. The story is from the perspective of our narrator who lives in a world very much like our own, except that everyday objects are known to have their own thoughts, feelings, and motivations. When our story begins, our narrator opens the door to their work, but before he's fully gone through the threshold, the door slams by itself and kind of clips his hand in the process. He's like, "Jesus, what's with that?" And his coworker comes up to him and he's like, "You know, you're the third person he's done that to today." And when the narrator later goes to a doctor's office, the receptionist's like, "Go ahead and have a seat and the doctor will be with you shortly." And he's like, "Well, where's the couch?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. You know, every time someone's come to sit on the couch today, he starts burning up. We've been giving him injections every hour, but he only seems to do it whenever someone's sitting on him." And when the narrator, the look of confusion on your face. So yeah, objects are employed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when the narrator goes home, he opens his cupboard and finds that this one ugly cup he owns, something he bought years ago and only keeps around for nostalgia, is gone. And he hears from someone that objects are beginning to go on strike. This escalates when the narrator tries to take a drive at night, and what's considered an object has him guessing. He turns the corner onto this one street, and he sees dozens of dead people in a pile on an empty lot. Their apartment building, because it too is an object, suddenly vanished and dropped all its tenants to the ground.
You sure his communist shit never went into his writing, bud? You sure about that?
Why would that be? How does that have anything to do with communism?
I'm sure it's just wacky.
Okay, we're actually going to come up to this. When the narrator turns to go down another road, he finds that the road itself, too, is gone, because that is also an object. By the end of the story, the people of the city have fled to the hills to watch as the military comes to attack the protesting objects, as they have clearly declared war on people. But when shit's about to go down, the citizens see the whole town just disappear, including the clothes on their own backs. Everything around them has resigned, and they realize that at least they, people, are not objects. Quote, never again will men be treated as things.
So like I was saying. Yeah.
All right. Now, while the manual of painting and calligraphy...
After they just shot at the brave little toaster.
Does he get shot?
I don't know.
I don't fucking remember.
No, probably not. Maybe. I don't know. Those movies got weird, dude.
There's some weird shit that happened in
I
that fucking
don't
movie. I remember
remember-
an angry furnace, but I...
No, dude, I don't remember those movies, but I remember my nightmares I had after watching them.
Yeah, so that could be where he gets, shot and gets put into a public school system.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. What? Oh, God. Go.
There was like 2 sequels, I think. No, well, yeah, because he goes to Mars in the second one.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Which one had the oven? Furnace.
That was the first one.
Okay.
He gets fucking angry and burns up. Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah.
No, while the manual of painting and calligraphy was reviewed by a few sparse reviewers in the Western world, it was this collection, The Lives of Things, that got the Western world's attention. Saramago would not become truly famous until a few novels later, but at the very least, he was getting under the skin of those who read his work. But as weird and fun as his stories are, reviewers could not seem to understand that a story can simply be that, fun. They started to place ideas in things that didn't exist, getting praise from those who said, it's all brilliantly political, you just wouldn't get it, while others called it too political. So both people who loved it and people who hated it said, that son of a bitch is saying something, but no one knew what it was. I mean, there'd been the story about Salazar falling from his chair, but all Saramago described was what happened, nothing more. As a matter of fact, no one bothered to even ask Saramago, who later said that the stories in the collection are just about death. That's the theme. There's a story about a king that tries to escape death, a guy who's killed by a chair breaking, a guy who's killed by his car when it gains sentience. It's all death. That's all it is.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, what idiots to think that this guy who was super into communism would have,
I'm just
like
saying.
writing about those specific topics, especially a dictator dying in a chair. Like, wow.
Well, to be fair, I mean, he had to live...
What do you guys mean? I'm just writing about him falling from his chair. Like, shut the fuck up.
To be fair, he had to live under that guy's dictatorship, and he probably hates him. Everyone
I'm
hates
just
him.
saying, if he's that fucking involved in politics, it's not fucking, out of left field to be like, hey, I
I get it. Yeah, no, I get it.
Hey, maybe it's not about a chair.
Well, who's this guy sitting in the chair? It's, unnamed.
See him just
weird.
Being a pretentious dick about it and being like, it's just about death. Like, shut the fuck up. No, fuck you.
Well, 2 years after his collection of short stories, Jose Saramago released a book called Raised from the Ground in 1980. Now, from what I could tell, it's about farmers. I don't know. I couldn't really find much info on it. I guess because Saramago is eventually known for his weird stories, that this one was just normal, so Which kind of sucks because I know it's well written, but the book didn't get much merit for it.
It's about farming. Is it boring? Yes.
Oh, actually, it's about communism. Anyway.
This one actually is a manual.
The following year, Saramago released a book called Journey to Portugal, which was advertised as a travelogue. Like, here's a list of things you can do to visit Portugal, which it kind of is, but not completely. Journey to Portugal does technically tell you the sights of the country, but it's also partly a memoir. That's the best I can figure out because I never read it, but it seems just like with Manual of Painting and Calligraphy, Jose Saramago used a shit title to promote his work, so he got shit sales. However, it did once again divide the critics. Some said, how can you pretend this is a travelogue and trick people into reading your work? And others just simply thought it was a funny thing that he did to piss people off. And either way, it was getting attention, which is exactly what Saramago wanted. Now, over the last 10 years, Jose Saramago has released a short story collection and 3 novels. But it was in 1982 that he would reach his much longer...
Wait, over the last 10 years or his last 10 years?
His last 10 years.
Okay, you got me confused there.
You thought I was talking about fucking 2012?
I don't fucking know.
It was in 1982 that he would reach his much longed for and much deserved stardom with his 4th novel, in English titled Baltasar and Blimunda. The story itself, much like Manual of Painting and Calligraphy, follows no real plot, merely a look on the lives of our 2 18th century titular heroes. Baltasar is ex-military. He fought for the Portuguese army, but was removed from its ranks after losing his left hand during warfare. He's become effectively homeless since his discharge, and wanders from town to town in search of work. Baltasar finds very few people willing to hire him because of his disability, but with what little he makes from those kind enough to employ him, he decides to give himself an upgrade. He commissions 2 works from a blacksmith, a hook, so that he can sling sacks of grain or whatever, should he get work from a farmer, upping his chances of employment, and a long metal spike, strictly for self-defense while he sleeps on the streets, which becomes immediately useful when a couple guys try to attack him, and Baltasar ends up killing at least one of them. Just like drives it through his jaw, I think.
Yeah.
Sick. That's so Bloodborne. Now,
Fuck off.
Now our other character, Blimunda.
I don't know anything about John Bloodborne.
I'm from Castle Dark Souls. Now, our other character, Blimunda.
No inside jokes on the podcast. God damn it.
Blimunda is the daughter of a convicted witch. We're introduced to her as she watches her mother burn at the stake in the town square.
Why did this shit get all Evil Dead?
What?
Like all his shit right now.
Oh, no, that was a thing that happened, especially in Portugal. They burned a lot of fucking witches.
No, I just meant his writing. You know, weird little weapon hands and then witch burnings and things. Like, that's...
I don't know. You want me to go back to talking about oranges or
No,
something?
no,
Like-
I'm just saying, like, it's kind of out of fucking nowhere here. Like,
So we're introduced to her as she watches her own mother burn at the stake in the town square, her face lost among the crowd of people. And it's here that she meets the kindly-faced Baltasar, one man among the onlookers. Now, for whatever reason, they click, immediately fall in love. They get married, like, that night, if I'm not mistaken. Just find a fucking priest, like, hey, come on. Good. I want it.
no, don't give her a chance to fucking change her mind.
Yeah. Baltasar finds a home with Blimunda, moving into the little hovel that she occupied with her mother. And every morning, Baltasar finds that his new wife does this one peculiar thing. Immediately, when she wakes up, she covers her eyes with her arm and grabs a loaf of bread on her bedside table that she's placed there the night before. When Baltasar asks her about it, she says that she has some of her mother's witchy powers. In particular, that when she's hungry, she can see...
I can eat bread without looking at it. Because I'm a witch.
Whoa, holy shit, murder!
Takes me like 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 tries to grab the bread.
But I get it every time.
And then from there, I always know where my mouth is.
God damn it. So, she says that when she's hungry, she can see people's human will trapped inside of them. And it's never quite explained what the fuck that means, but she says that she refuses to ever look at the will that's inside of Baltasar. I don't know, man. I just see her face and you're just kind of like, and I'm like, what?
I got nothing yet.
All right.
Fucking let it build. Let it simmer.
Well, partly by happenstance and partly because I can't remember, Baltasar and Blimunda end up being hired on as workers to a man named Bartolomeu de Guzmão. Now, Bartolomeu was a real person. He was known for designing some of the first lighter-than-air spacecrafts. Lighter-than-air spacecraft. That's what I meant to say.
Okay.
He never did end up constructing a working one, but he's still remembered as a pioneer of flight today. Anyway, according to Saramago's book, he employed Baltasar to help him construct such a spacecraft, while Blimunda plays the harp nearby. And Bartolomeu believes that with her powers, he can make the spacecraft actually fly.
Why would that help? Okay, go on.
Because
I'm
you
sorry.
see,
I'm sorry. Okay.
you see, the only thing lighter than air is God's will. And with Blimunda able to see the will of each person, Bartholomew employs her to walk around the city with
This man's not an engineer.
Wait a second. Is this your garage?
Hang on.
She walks around the city with a cask of little bottles, and she captures the will of the people. And again, Saramago never explains how this is done exactly, but he dismisses any need to actually explain it by simply saying, after all, this is a fairy tale.
All right, man.
So Bartholomew one day tells Baltasar that he's like God himself, because in the Bible, it speaks only of Jesus sitting at God's right hand. And well, wouldn't there be someone sitting at his left? The absence of such a passage makes Bartholomew believe that this is proof that God is one-handed. Now, that's going to seem like a random tidbit, but it does come up later. Anyway, when the jars are filled with human will, they're attached to the flying machine. After years of hard work, it really does fly. And with no time to spare, as when the three companions soar into the sky, the Inquisition bursts into the workshop, destroying everything they can on the basis of witchcraft.
I really hope this was written better than you're presenting it, because this is fucking wild and random.
It is pretty fucking wild and random. I will say, though, that might not have been the Inquisition. That could have just been, like, the actual tenants. You know, God damn it, squatters!
It sounds like there's going to be a corny twist ending where he, like, wakes up on the street from a dream, and he's a crazed bum with a fucking stick duct taped to his arm. And
then there he is, and as he rolls over and wipes his ass with, like, fascist manifesto papers and says, this wasn't a tale about communism at all. Ugh, and then just slaps it on the side of the building. Yeah, good job. You got it. Yep. Now, the one thing that Bartholomew didn't consider was how to pilot this fucking thing. And his experiment eventually takes the three friends hundreds of miles away from their town before finally crashing in the woods near the town of Mafra, Portugal. Now, throughout this novel, we've been given little snippets here and there of King John V attempting to have a healthy heir. When he speaks to priests, they of course tell him, build a big old church and God will give you a child. The king, wanting the work to get underway immediately so he can have his kid, basically uses slave labor on the town of Mafra. It still took like 30 fucking years to construct, but he does get it done, like in real life. So as Baltasar one day goes to town for supplies, he himself ends up as one of those forced into the church's construction. The labor kills a lot of people, including this one part where the slaves have to like carry a big unbroken slab of marble over several miles, and it just starts crushing people as it goes through. It's pretty cool. And in the end, the construction does injure Baltasar, but he does still survive. When the church is finally finished, Baltasar and Blimunda are old. On a whim, and in a bout of nostalgia, Baltasar goes to visit the flying airship, which has never been discovered, still just hanging out in the woods. But as he boards the ship, the machine comes back to life, rising into the clouds, and sails off, with no indication of where it takes him. For the next several years, Blimunda searches for Baltasar, with every excursion becoming more dangerous and fruitless, until one day she hears of a man amongst a group of workers with a funny idea. This one guy I met one time says that God is one-handed, as he has only ever been mentioned to have Jesus at his right hand and nothing on his left. And with this one rumor, Blimunda makes her way to many towns, eventually stopping at a public burning, much like the one her mother was in all those years ago, and sees Baltasar at the stake. Quote, 11 people have been sentenced. The stake is already ablaze, and the faces of the victims are barely distinguishable. The last man to be burned has his left hand missing. Perhaps because of his blackened beard, a miraculous transformation caused by the soot. He looks much younger, and there is a dark cloud in the center of his body. Then Blimunda said, come. The will of Baltasar Setswa broke free from his body, but it did not ascend to the stars, for it belonged to the earth and to Blimunda.
The end. Okay.
It was a beautiful book.
All right.
Now, as I mentioned before, this was Jose Saramago's first big hit, and afterwards, every book he produced would now become a bestseller. But whereas he already had a name in Portugal and a small cult following in the Western world, he was now a superstar worldwide at the age of 60. And I like to think this wouldn't have happened had he not found out that the English publishers planned on changing a bunch of shit to Baltasar and Blimunda to make it read more like a standard novel, you know, with like paragraph breaks and quotation marks, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when he found out about it, he was pissed. He put a stop to that shit immediately. Now, the next several books of his, I admittedly haven't read. Fucking yet. Because the best thing about Jose Saramago's stories are the insane ideas behind them. Kind of like everyday objects going on strike. Brilliant. You know, the ideas are what make reading his books so much fun.
Yes.
Well,
I'm sorry. Go. No.
What?
Don't stop on my account. Come on.
Well, 2 years after Baltasar and Blimunda was released, Jose Saramago came out with a book called The Year of the Death of Ricardo Reis in 1984. Now, Ricardo Reis was a real-life pseudonym used by the most famous of all Portuguese writers, a guy named Fernando Pessoa. This guy published a lot of work under many different names, and Ricardo Reis is just one of many. More specifically, Fernando Pessoa would write in a different style for every alias that he had. So if he wrote with the name Abilio Quaresma, it was more than likely going to be a detective story. If he wrote like Joaquim Mora Costa, he would write poetry that was more favored towards the Portuguese government.
God,
Shit
he's an
like
asshole.
that. Right? It's brilliant. So anyway, The Year of the Death of Ricardo Reis is about one of Fernando's pseudonyms finding out about his real-life creator's death in 1936 and how this walking fictional persona decides to spend their final days. Like, he lives on afterwards, not finding out that the actual author is dead. Isn't that fucking brilliant? That's so cool.
I mean, I guess.
Saramago later said that as much as he likes Fernando Pessoa's poetry, he was a little offended by a quote of his where he said, "Wise is he who is satisfied with the spectacle of the world." Like, you'd be wise to love the world as it is. And Saramago took offense to that. So he made this book to say, you know, you died a year before the Nazis really came to power, before Franco overtook Spain. Fuck you.
Yeah.
This book in Baltasar and Blimunda actually got Jose Saramago knighted by the Portuguese government. In 1986, Saramago released his next novel, The Stone Raft, about the Iberian Peninsula, which is that chunk off to the left side of Europe that comprises of Spain and Portugal, breaking off from the rest of Europe and just floating down south around the ocean, and how that would absolutely fuck with the rest of the world, both politically and economically. I guess this book was made as a metaphor for how Europe kind of needs to take responsibility for how they fucked over practically the entirety of the southern hemisphere.
Hey, what did he say when you asked him, though? Did he just say it was just about the island splitting off?
No, he was upfront about this one, and it has nothing to do with communism. He's just saying that they're colonizing really kind of fucked things, and then they just expected not to pay for any of their own actions when they left.
Yeah.
That's all. And apparently a YouTuber by the name of James Hargreaves Guitar found that Noel Gallagher from Oasis, he stole lines from The Stone Raft, the book, and he put them into Oasis songs in the 90s, and he thought no one would notice, and for a while they didn't. But I mean, still another reason why Oasis is probably just overblown and doesn't need to be.
I can't name one fucking song, man.
Yes, you fucking can.
Can't.
Wonderwall. You have heard of Wonderwall, you bitch.
I mean,
you absolute fucking bitch.
I have. I just didn't make space for it in my brain.
Well, it's there now. Goodbye, math.
No, it's getting thrown out.
It was the same year of 1986 that Jose Saramago met a journalist from Spain named Pilar del Rio, a sweet little thing, 27 years his junior. Now, yes, Saramago is not the best of husbands, obviously, but I would like to point out that for all the philandering he did stay with this one for the rest of his life.
He didn't have that much life.
I mean, kind of, yeah, it's true.
That's not impressive.
I mean, also, that's kind of how Ted Hughes did it, now that I think about it. Well, either way.
Yeah.
Pilar was a huge fan of Saramago's.
I don't know, maybe his wife was sick of him anyway. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, it's true. Honestly, I don't know.
Maybe just sick of his shit.
I could go look up like the public records of his divorce, but I'm pretty sure I don't know Portuguese, I think. You might. Do you know Portuguese?
Why would I know Portuguese, Jordan?
You're Hispanic.
Is that what I am, Jordan?
Latin American?
Jordan, I don't even fucking know.
Caribbean.
Okay.
All right. So anyways, Pilar was a huge fan of Saramago's, having read all of his books up to that point, and she would go on to be his official Spanish translator for his work. They married 2 years after meeting in 1988. What's funny is that both Baltasar and Blimunda and The Year of the Death of Ricardo Reis were actually dedicated to Saramago's then-wife Isabel, but once he left her, those dedications got taken out in later editions.
Yeah, no.
I that's a little, come on.
Well,
I mean, well, look, when you wrote you didn't rewrite the story and rededicate it to someone else. When
yes,
you wrote
but
it,
new
it's
wife
dedicated.
isn't going to touch his penis if there's dedications in the new editions.
I'm just saying.
Okay?
Well, write something else for her. I don't. Fuck it.
Not
Whatever.
a lot of fucking time left.
That's true.
Needs to get touched.
Needs.
I mean, yeah.
In 1989, he released a book called The History of the Siege of Lisbon. I feel like this would have been another opportunity to trick readers with the title had his name not actually been printed bigger than the actual title of the book at this point. Well, the book is about a proofreader for a historical textbook documenting the Siege of Lisbon in the 1500s.
Have you gone over this before?
No.
No? You sure about that?
What are you thinking of?
I always think of that one. Never mind. Go on.
I'm really curious what the fuck you're thinking of.
God, we're going to have to pause for me to remember this, man. We can do that if you want.
Caleb was thinking of Walter M. Miller Jr., which is, I mean, hey, bravo. But just because there's a siege of Lisbon and then a siege of something else are two different things.
But they both started with L.
Oh, you're talking about Lisbon and then his book, A Canticle for Leibowitz.
And then further on in his...
It started with L, yes, the third word in the title of it.
Okay, look, how many fucking episodes are there? Okay, how long are each of them? How insane would it be if I accurately remembered each one of them?
I would fucking love it, honestly. I could have just wonderful conversations.
If my brain worked like that, I wouldn't climb fucking trees with chainsaws for a living, you asshole.
So anyway, The History of the Siege of Lisbon. It's about a proofreader for a historical textbook documenting the Siege of Lisbon in the 1500s, which is different from the siege you're talking about in World War II. It didn't last that long. Okay. This proofreader, for whatever reason, inserts the single word "not," making the sentence go from "the Crusaders did come to the aid of the Portuguese when they took Lisbon from the Moors" to "the Crusaders did not come to the aid of the Portuguese when they took Lisbon from the Moors." This single word causes a huge scandal between historians, nationalists, and political rivalries, even within the publishing house itself. That single word even causes the main character's boss to fall madly in love with him. And of course, as mentioned before, Jose Saramago was himself a proofreader and translator for textbooks for like 20 years. So besides the main story, Saramago also intersperses the real history of the Siege of Lisbon, as well as telling the reader how publishing houses work. He did confirm that this character is pretty much just himself. Now, around this time...
Wait, what was the word?
Huh? Oh, not.
Oh, okay.
So instead of like the Crusaders did help, they did not help.
They did help not.
They did not help not. And I mean, a bunch of like nationalists are like, fuck yeah, we did it all ourselves. And like a bunch of politicians that want to change history are just like, yeah, that's right, we did it all ourselves. And other ones are like, no, what the fuck are you doing? You know, it causes a huge upset. I like it. Now, around this time, Jose Saramago started showing up on ballots for random political positions in the city, acting as a representative of the Communist Party. He said he knew he wouldn't win, didn't even know what he was signing up for half the time, but he still wanted to keep socialists on their toes. He would continue to make himself a candidate for random shit until like 2008. Now, you remember that book that Saramago never heard back from the publishers about, Skylight? The one that made him quit writing entirely for like 20 years?
Yeah.
Turns out he never got a response because the manuscript, as you mentioned, was simply misplaced. The book had just been sitting in the publisher's archives for almost 4 decades before being rediscovered. And at this point, Jose Saramago had a name. Surprisingly, instead of the publishers just printing it on their own and making bank, they asked Saramago what to do with it, and he took it back, still never mentioning the book for the rest of his life, saying that he would only publish it once he was dead. And he would. Now, for the last 15 years, Jose Saramago has steadily grown to become one of the best-selling authors in Europe. And with his next novel in 1991, he will decide to stake his entire career on a book that will lose him followers, gain him threats, and ultimately will lead to him winning the Nobel Prize for Literature. That book, from lifelong atheist Jose Saramago, is The Gospel According to Jesus Christ. And that's where we will pick it up next episode.
Oh, we're going to get real edgelordy next episode. I'm like, God damn it, dude.
My sources today: Manual of Painting and Calligraphy by Jose Saramago, translated by Giovanni Pontiero, Penguin Random House Vintage Classics Edition 2018, The Lives of Things by Jose Saramago, translated by Giovanni Pontiero. Verso, 2012, Baltasar Blimunda by Jose Saramago, translated by Giovanni Pontiero. Harcourt, Brace and Company, First Harvest Edition, 1998, Wikipedia. And I would also like to thank my research assistant, wife, for all of her help.
I think it's worse if you just call her wife.
Nicole.
Yeah.
I thought I said her name.
Yeah, you did earlier.
Oh, okay.
You just said wife there. So.
You know, the wife. You know, the old, the old ball and chain. My back hurts.
Cool. So anyway, when are we doing the next one?
Well, this one's This one's the next episode's already written up already for this guy in particular.
Sick. Yeah. So when are we gonna be recording that?
This one is going to come out on November 16th to celebrate the 100th birthday of Jose Saramago. The next one doesn't really matter.
Man, you should really meet up with the one listener that impresses, and you guys should both just jerk each other's dicks.
We have met up on several occasions. I'm sorry that we didn't invite you. You just didn't seem down. Hey, you know.
Yeah, fuck, damn.
We're just out there quoting spermatozoa. Oh.
Fuck you.
So, yeah, any
thoughts?
Give me a second there. Hang on.
Thoughts? Fuck, that was long. I came here ready, and I'm still drained. Like, I haven't even moved in days, man. I'm like, you know, I'm like ready to go. I came in here with a lot of energy, and now I think I'm just gonna go to sleep.
Well, let me tell you, our episodes are up on YouTube now. So at least there's that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
At least the first 2 seasons.
So there's another way to track that we aren't getting listened to.
I know that fucking Spotify is lying to me, saying like, no, that's way too many people. We should not be having that kind of listenership.
Oh, really? Wait, can we actually listen to like how many people have just, or can we actually see how many people have just fucking streamed?
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? That's a way more accurate.
Pretty good number.
Okay.
But that's what makes me feel it's a lie.
Yeah.
Anyway, this will release on 16th, next episode. You know what? Just find out. You'll find out. You'll figure it out.
Jesus, why does that sound like a threat?
Hey, I'm coming to your fucking house and you're going to find out.